The Kurds are an ethnic group of nearly 40 million people, possessing their own distinct language, culture, and a history that spans thousands of years. Their population is larger than that of countries like Poland or Canada. They are one of the largest ethnic groups in the Middle East, yet they have no official existence on the world map. These are the Kurds, a brave and tragic people of history. From Anatolia and Turkey to the Zagros Mountains of Iran, from the fertile lands of Iraq to the northern regions of Syria, the Kurds have lived for centuries across a vast mountainous region. This region represents their dream homeland, Kurdistan, meaning the land of the Kurds. For over a century, they have fought for freedom, endured unimaginable oppression, and have been betrayed time and again by powerful states. They were among the frontline fighters against the brutal force of ISIS. Yet when the war ended, instead of rewards, they received only neglect and deprivation. But why? Why does the world's fourth largest ethnic group not have its own state? What historical conspiracy or geopolitical curse has prevented them from uniting under a single flag? And how much of this failure lies within their own internal divisions? These are the questions we will seek to answer. The Kurds are primarily an Indo-European ethnic group, ethnically closest to the Persians. Their language, Kurdish, is related to Persian and has several dialects. While this linguistic diversity reflects their rich culture, it has also at times hindered the development of a unified national identity. Religiously, most Kurds are Sunni Muslims, but there are also Shia, Alevi, Yazidi, and Christian minorities among them, giving their society a multidimensional character. Their homeland, historically known as Kurdistan, is not an official country. Rather, it is a cultural and geographical region divided among four nations: southeastern Turkey, western Iran, northern Iraq, and northern Syria. This mountainous and rugged terrain has preserved their distinct identity and warrior spirit for centuries. The Kurds have a famous proverb: "The mountains are our only friends." This saying poignantly reflects their geographical isolation and historical loneliness. These mountains, while shielding them from foreign invasions, have also hindered communication among Kurdish tribes and isolated them from the international world. Historically, the Kurds consider themselves descendants of ancient Mesopotamian peoples, the Medes, Gutians, and Hurrians. In the 7th century, following the Arab conquests, they adopted Islam. Later, under the Ottoman and Persian empires, they survived as semi-autonomous principalities or emirates. One of the most renowned heroes of Islamic and world history, Sultan Saladin, was himself a Kurd, the leader who recaptured Jerusalem from the Crusaders. This proud heritage has instilled in the Kurds a deep sense of nationalism that continues to fuel their desire for independence today. The tragedy of the Kurds' modern statelessness began in the early 20th century. After the devastation of World War I, the Ottoman Empire, which had ruled vast parts of the Middle East for nearly 6 centuries, was defeated. The victorious Allied powers, mainly Britain and France, began planning to divide this enormous empire to suit their own interests. At that time, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson, his famous 14 points, had inspired a new global discourse on the right of nations to self-determination. This principle ignited fresh hope for independence among the world's subjugated peoples. Under this new ideal, ethnic groups like the Arabs, Armenians, and Kurds, who had lived under the Ottoman rule, began dreaming of forming their own nation-states. This dream took formal shape in the Treaty of Sèvres, 1920. The treaty, imposed by the Allies on the defeated Ottoman Empire, contained harsh terms. But for the Kurds, Articles 62, 63, and 64 represented a historic moment. It explicitly proposed the establishment of an autonomous Kurdish region in eastern Turkey, and within a year, the Kurds would be allowed to hold a referendum on full independence to be recognized by the League of Nations.
For the first time in history, an international treaty promised the creation of an independent Kurdistan. The Kurds' thousand-year-old dream seemed on the verge of becoming reality, but that dream was short-lived. Although the Ottoman sultans signed the Treaty of Sèvres, Turkish nationalists fiercely opposed it. Under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, they launched a war of independence against this humiliating treaty. After 3 years of bloody conflict, Atatürk's forces emerged victorious, forcing the Allies to renegotiate. The reasons were complex: part military success, part shifting geopolitical interests. In the Middle East, especially in the Mosul province of then Mesopotamia, a region that was part of Kurdistan, massive oil reserves had been discovered. Britain wanted to include these oil fields within its newly created client state of Iraq. An independent Kurdistan would have made controlling this oil far more difficult. Thus, for the victorious powers, economic and resource-based interests outweighed the principle of national self-determination. As a result, in 1923, the Treaty of Lausanne was signed. This new agreement accepted nearly all of the demands of the emerging Turkish Republic. The biggest losers were the Kurds and the Armenians. The Treaty of Lausanne made no mention of Kurdistan or Kurdish self-determination. The same British and French powers that had promised Kurdish independence just 2 years earlier now prioritized normalizing relations with Turkey and securing control over Middle Eastern oil. The map of Kurdistan that had been drawn in the Treaty of Sèvres was erased forever in Lausanne. Kurdish lands were ruthlessly divided among 4 new or reconstituted states: Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. This became one of the greatest betrayals in modern history, remembered as the Great Betrayal. From that moment on, the fate of the Kurds was sealed, confined within 4 separate prisons under 4 different governments. Since the Treaty of Lausanne, the history of the Kurds has been one of bloody struggle for identity and rights under these 4 states. In Turkey, where the largest Kurdish population resides, the founder of modern Turkey, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, adopted the principle of creating a homogeneous Turkish nation-state. Under this policy, Kurdish identity was outright denied. After the suppression of early Kurdish uprisings, such as the Sheikh Said Rebellion of 1925, the Turkish state implemented a strict assimilation policy. Kurds were labeled Mountain Turks, and the Kurdish language, culture, and even the words Kurd and Kurdistan were officially banned. In response to this brutal repression, in 1978, Abdullah Öcalan founded the Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, which initially followed a Marxist-Leninist ideology and began an armed struggle against the Turkish state with the goal of establishing an independent Kurdistan. Over the past 4 decades, this conflict has claimed more than 40,000 lives. To suppress the insurgency, the Turkish government destroyed thousands of Kurdish villages, displaced millions, and used controversial tactics such as the village guard system to sow division among Kurds. Turkey and its Western allies label the PKK a terrorist organization, but to many Kurds, its members are freedom fighters. In May 2025, however, the PKK officially announced an end to its armed struggle. By July, its members had begun formally surrendering their weapons, signaling a shift toward democratic political participation. Meanwhile, the fate of the Iraqi Kurds was the most dramatic and blood-soaked of all. Despite repeated promises of autonomy from Baghdad, those pledges were never fully honored. When the Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party came to power in the 1970s, the situation grew even worse. In 1975, under the Algiers Agreement, Iran's Shah, under U.S. pressure, withdrew support from Kurdish insurgents in Iraq, causing their resistance movement to collapse. Under Saddam Hussein's regime, the Kurds faced one of the most brutal genocides in modern history. Between 1987 and 1988, during what was called the Anfal campaign, Nearly 180,000 Kurds were systematically killed. Its most horrific episode came on March 16, 1988, in the Kurdish city of Halabja, when the Iraqi military launched a chemical attack. Within minutes, over 5,000 Kurdish men, women, and children were killed by nerve gas. It remains one of the darkest chapters of human cruelty in the 20th century. However, the fall of Saddam Hussein in 2003 marked a turning point in the fate of the Iraqi Kurds. With U.S. support, they succeeded in establishing the Kurdistan regional government under Iraq's new constitution, a highly autonomous region with its own army, the Peshmerga, parliament, and control over oil resources. Today, this region stands as one of the most stable and prosperous areas in the Middle East, a living model of what an independent Kurdistan could look like. In 2017, the KRG even held a referendum for independence. But due to intense opposition from Iraq, Turkey, Iran, and the international community, the dream once again faded. The Kurds in Iran have faced decades of repression as well. In 1946, with Soviet backing, they managed to establish an independent state, the Republic of Mahabad, though it only lasted 11 months. It was short-lived, but it holds immense symbolic importance in Kurdish history as their first modern attempt at nationhood. Once the Soviet forces withdrew, the Iranian government swiftly crushed the fledgling republic. Even after the Islamic Revolution of 1979, little changed for Iran's Kurds. The central government in Tehran has continued to suppress any form of Kurdish nationalism, and their struggle today remains largely confined to demands for cultural and political rights, struggles that often go unnoticed by the international media. In Syria, the Kurds were historically among the most marginalized communities. Under Hafez al-Assad, the father of current President Bashar al-Assad, the government implemented the Arab Belt policy, settling Arab populations in Kurdish-majority regions to alter demographic balances. Hundreds of thousands of Kurds were even denied citizenship. But the situation changed dramatically after the Syrian civil war broke out in 2011. While the Assad regime was busy fighting rebels elsewhere, the main Kurdish force, the PPY, and its female wing, the YPJ, seized control of northern Syria and established a self-governing region known as Rojava. Rojava soon found itself on the front line against the Islamic State, ISIS. With U.S. air support, YPG and YPJ fighters fought heroically and achieved historic victories in cities like Kobani. They became one of the most effective forces in defeating ISIS. Yet, history seemed to repeat itself. In 2019, after the fall of ISIS, the U.S. suddenly announced its withdrawal of its troops from northern Syria. Seizing the opportunity, Turkey, which considers the YPG an offshoot of the PKK, its longtime enemy, launched a military invasion into Rojava. The same Kurds who had shed blood for years fighting ISIS on America's behalf were now abandoned by their ally. It was, once again, a betrayal of history's proportions. Perhaps the greatest of the 21st century.